Tonight, let the river carry you, a river that flows softly, through mountains, through moonlight, through dreams. Let each story be a gentle current, carrying away the weight of your day, until all that's left is the soft sound of water and the quiet rhythm of your own breath. If you are ready, let us drift together. Each story is a ripple on this river, guiding you closer to the shore of your dreams. The lantern by the river. The river was wide, slow, and silver under the moonlight. Mist hovered just above its surface, curling like soft smoke, and the air smelled of wet earth and night blossoms. Along the quiet bank, an old monk named Hien walked barefoot. His robe brushed against the grass, and the soft crunch of soil was the only sound he made. In his hands, he carried a small paper lantern. Its frame was bamboo, its surface thin rice paper, and inside a single flame flickered, painting the air with golden warmth. Hien had spent many nights here by the river. By day, he smiled easily and guided the younger monks in meditation. He taught them to breathe, to sit, to wait. But at night, when the temple fell silent, he felt the weight of his own thoughts pressing on his chest. He carried memories he could not release. Faces, words, moments that clung like heavy vines. And tonight, the lantern in his hand carried all of them. It was an old ritual taught by his teacher many years ago. When the mind refuses to soften, give your heaviness a shape. Give it light, and let the river carry it for you. Hien knelt at the edge of the water. The river whispered softly, like a mother humming to a child. The flame trembled in the lantern as if it knew it would soon be free. He whispered into the paper, "Tonight, I give you my worries, my regrets, my heavy stones." With slow, careful hands, he placed the lantern on the surface of the water. At first, it wobbled. Then it floated. The flame reflected twice, once on the paper, once on the river, like two gentle eyes closing. The current was subtle, almost invisible, but the lantern began to drift away, carrying with it the whispers he had left inside. Hien watched it go. He did not move. He only listened. A frog croaked softly from somewhere unseen. A fish rippled the surface, and the moon wavered for a moment. And then, only stillness. A stillness so complete that he felt it in his bones. For the first time in many nights, his breath felt unchained. He inhaled, like the river itself was filling his chest. He exhaled, and it was as if the river was breathing him out. The lantern drifted further, its glow shrinking against the vast silver water. For a moment, Hien felt a pang of sadness. To let go, he realized, sometimes feels like losing something. But as the lantern moved into the distance, he noticed the reflection of the stars on the river. There were hundreds of small lights now, and his little lantern was simply one among many. His burdens, once heavy, now felt shared, like the sky itself had taken them. He remembered his teacher's words, "The river does not keep what you give it. It carries it to the ocean and returns to you as rain, lighter, softer, a new chance." Hien smiled, letting the night air cool his face. The lantern vanished around the bend, but inside, the heaviness had already left. He stood slowly, brushing the damp earth from his robe. The river whispered once more, as if saying, "Come back whenever you need to let go again." Hien bowed to the water, turned toward the quiet path back to the temple, and walked lightly, as though the earth itself had grown softer under his feet. Sometimes, peace does not come by holding tighter, but by letting the current take what no longer belongs to you. Tonight, let the river carry you too. The boat that waited. On the bend of the same quiet river, there was a small wooden boat. Its paint had faded to soft gray. Its oars leaned against its sides like tired arms. No one remembered the last time it had been used. Yet, each evening, when the mist began to rise, the boat swayed gently, as if it were waiting for someone. One summer night, a young monk named Lin wandered to the riverbank. Sleep had avoided him for many days. He carried with him the weight of invisible questions. Why do I feel restless even in silence? Why does my heart race even when nothing is chasing me? The old abbot had once told him, when the mind is too full, the body cannot rest. Go where the water moves and listen. So he walked and found the boat. Lin knelt to touch the wood. It was cool and rough under his fingers. The boat rocked gently, inviting him, but a part of him hesitated. What if it drifts away and never comes back? What if I am not ready to leave the shore? The river, of course, said nothing. Only the soft lap of water against the boat replied, like a slow heartbeat. Finally, Lin stepped in. The boat wobbled, then settled, as if sighing in relief. He sat cross-legged, hands on his knees, and let the current decide where to take him. No oars, no control, only trust. The river carried him slowly. The temple lights faded behind the trees. All that remained was water, moonlight, and the soft creak of wood. He watched the world slide by, the reflection of the moon shivering on ripples, a heron standing silent at the edge of the reeds, fireflies blinking like sleepy stars in the grass. For the first time in weeks, his chest felt like it was opening, as if the night itself had taken a deep breath for him. As the boat drifted, Lin realized something. He had always tried to row his life, to push, to reach, to control every current. But tonight, he let the river carry him, and it felt like a secret he had been missing all along. Minutes, or maybe hours, passed. Time dissolved like sugar in warm tea. The boat drifted to the other side of the river, where a cluster of lotus flowers bloomed in silence. Lin reached out and let his fingers brush one petal. It was cool, alive, and trembling slightly with the water. In that moment, he felt it. The world didn't need his constant rowing. It only needed him to float. When he finally pushed the boat back to shore, the moon was high and silver. He stepped onto the earth, barefoot, feeling lighter than when he had arrived. He didn't tie the boat tightly. He only set it against the grass, knowing it would wait for the next night or the next restless heart. Back in his simple wooden room, Lin lay down without expectation. The sound of the river still moved in his chest. The sway of the boat rocked him in memory. And finally, as if the river had reached into his dreams, he drifted into sleep, carried not by effort, but by trust. Sometimes, peace is not found on the shore, but in the drifting. Trust the river, trust the night, and let it carry you wherever your dreams are waiting. The Fisherman's Empty Net. The river was quiet at dawn, wrapped in a blanket of soft mist. A lone fisherman, Bao, pushed his small wooden boat into the water. He had done this for 40 years. Through summer rains, winter frost, and autumn winds, he always went to the river, his old friend, his old mirror. This morning was no different. The boat drifted softly as he unrolled his fishing net. He whispered to the river, "Today, let there be fish. My family needs it." The river said nothing. It only carried the light of the waking sun. Bao cast his net with the practiced grace of decades. The ripples spread, then stilled. Minutes passed. He pulled the net back up, empty. He sighed, but he was used to patience. He cast it again, waited, listened to the water lap softly against the boat. Again, empty. A flock of birds rose from the trees, as if laughing in the distance. Determined, Bao rowed farther down the river. The mist began to lift, revealing lotus leaves bobbing gently. He cast his net where the water was deep and still. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, and still his net caught nothing but water and fallen leaves. Frustration curled in his chest. He thought of his family. He thought of his own aging hands. He thought of the empty dinner bowls that might wait tonight. As Bao drifted past a bend, he saw an old monk sitting cross-legged on a rock by the shore. The monk's robe fluttered gently in the morning breeze. His eyes were closed. Bao called out, "Master, do you see any fish in this river today?" The monk opened his eyes and smiled. "Many," he said softly, "but perhaps not in your net." Bao frowned. "What do you mean?" The monk gestured to the river. "Look again." Bao followed his gaze. He saw sunlight scatter on the water like gold dust. He saw a dragonfly land, wings glittering like glass. He saw a tiny fish darting just beneath the surface, too small for his net, but alive, carefree. And for the first time that morning, he heard the river's voice, not in words, but in ripples and birdsong. His chest softened. The monk said, "Your net is heavy with expectation. Sometimes the river does not give what you demand, but it always gives what you need." Bao stared at his net. Water dripped from it like silver threads, empty, but not useless. He realized he had spent his life measuring mornings by the weight of his catch, and had forgotten the weightlessness of simply being here. Bao set his net down in the boat. He closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he didn't reach, didn't cast, didn't plan. He just let the boat drift, feeling the sun warm his face. He could hear his own heartbeat. He could feel the river hold him gently, as if saying, "You are enough," even empty-handed. When Bao rowed back home that day, his net was still empty. But he carried something else, a fullness he couldn't name. His wife asked, "No fish today?" He smiled and said, "No fish, but a good day." That night, Bao slept deeply, the sound of the river flowing quietly in his dreams. Not every emptiness is a loss. Some emptiness is the space where peace arrives. Tonight, may your nets be light. May your heart drift like a boat, gently down the river of dreams. The river and the old monk. The river had seen many seasons. It had carried spring blossoms and autumn leaves, heard the laughter of children, and swallowed the whispers of travelers who leaned over its banks to speak their secrets. Among all who came to the river, one old monk returned the most. His name was Min. His back was slightly curved, his pace unhurried, and his eyes seemed to hold the same calm as the water he loved. Every evening, Min would leave the temple just as the sun kissed the tops of the mountains. He would walk down the stone path, past the bamboo grove, until the scent of the river reached him, wet earth and green leaves cooling in the dusk. He never brought a fishing pole, never carried a lantern. Only his breath and the quiet steps of someone who had nothing to chase. Some evenings, Min spoke softly to the river. He would sit on a smooth rock, dip his fingers in the cool current, and whisper his thoughts. Today, I was impatient, he might say. Today, I clung to an old memory I should have let drift away. The river never scolded. It never gave advice. It simply flowed, as if saying, I know, and I carry it for you. One evening, a young novice from the temple followed Min. Curious, he asked, Master, why do you visit the river every day? You already meditate in the hall for hours. What can this river teach that the temple cannot? Min smiled, picked up a dry leaf, and let it fall onto the water. Watch, he said. The leaf spun slowly, caught in a swirl, then drifted downstream without resistance. The hall teaches me to sit with myself, Min said. The river teaches me to let go of myself. As twilight deepened, the surface of the river became a mirror. Min and the novice looked down and saw their faces, framed by clouds and soft light. When I was young, Min said, I would see my reflection and think, that is me. That is who I am. Now, I see the river and realize I am only passing through, like this reflection, like every leaf and every cloud. The novice whispered, Does that make you sad? Min chuckled gently. No, it makes me free. When the first stars appeared, Min always performed the same ritual. He would close his eyes, inhale the cool scent of the water, and bow, not to worship, but to thank. Then he would whisper, Take what I do not need, return what I have forgotten. And he would leave feeling lighter, as if his steps no longer pressed into the earth. One night, the old monk stayed longer than usual. The moon rose high, and the water glimmered like scattered pearls. The air was so gentle, the lullaby of the river so soft, that Min leaned back against the rock and drifted into sleep. In his dream, he was the river, he was the leaf, he was the sky holding stars, and in that dream, he realized there was nothing to hold on to because he had always been home. When he woke, a soft mist had wrapped him like a blanket. He rose slowly, smiled at the river one last time for the night, and whispered, Thank you, old friend. Until tomorrow. The river said nothing, yet its endless murmur was the kindest answer. Some friends never speak, yet they hear every word. Tonight, may you rest like a river, flowing without effort, holding nothing, and free. The floating leaf. The river was still in the soft light of late afternoon. Sunbeams filtered through the branches of old willows, dancing on the surface like tiny fragments of gold. And among all the drifting reflections, a single leaf floated gently downstream. It was small, oval-shaped, and carried a hint of the season, a faded green turning softly to yellow. The leaf had clung to its branch for as long as it could, but today the wind whispered, and it let go. The leaf spun slowly as the water carried it forward. It didn't know where the river ended. It didn't know how far it would travel. All it knew was that it was no longer where it began. A dragonfly passed overhead. A fish rippled the water beneath, and the leaf floated, unworried, untouched by the weight of choice. If the leaf could speak, it might have whispered, "Is this freedom?" On the riverbank sat a young girl named Mai. Her family's small house leaned close to the water, and she often came here after finishing her chores. She saw the leaf drifting toward her and reached out a hand, her fingers just brushing the cool surface. The leaf floated past, dancing in the current, and she felt a quiet thrill, as if the leaf was carrying a secret she couldn't quite name. She followed it along the shore, barefoot in the soft mud, curious where the river would take it. Further downstream, an old monk sat on a flat rock, eyes half closed in meditation. He heard the soft footsteps of the girl and opened his eyes just enough to see her chasing the leaf. "Little one," he said gently, "what are you following?" "The leaf," she replied. "It's floating away. I want to see where it goes." The monk smiled. "Perhaps it is showing you how to travel without rushing." Mai tilted her head, unsure of his meaning. They walked together along the river's edge, watching the leaf spin, pause, and glide forward again. "It doesn't fight the water," the monk said softly. "It doesn't ask where the river ends. It only waits and trusts." Mai whispered, "But what if it sinks?" "Then the journey continues, just in another form," he said. "Everything that lets go finds a new way to be." They watched as the river widened, and the leaf drifted farther from the bank, joining other tiny fragments of nature, twigs, petals, and more leaves on their own journeys. A soft breeze passed over the water. Mai closed her eyes and felt it on her skin, cool and weightless. She realized she wasn't worried about the leaf anymore. She was simply with it, floating, even while standing on the shore. As the sun lowered, the river turned to silver. The leaf became a tiny dark silhouette, then finally vanished into the evening glow. Mai let out a long breath she hadn't noticed she was holding. The monk said, "The leaf does not return to the tree, but it never leaves the river of life. It has only changed where it belongs." Mai walked home slowly, the sound of the water echoing in her chest. That night, she dreamed of floating, not falling, not flying, just drifting gently, held by something larger than herself. And somewhere on the quiet river, another leaf let go. Like the leaf, you can release the branch of worry tonight. Let the current hold you. Let the soft waters carry you. And in letting go, discover that you are already home. The bridge that disappeared. The river narrowed where the mountains leaned closer, and an old wooden bridge once connected its two sides. Long ago, travelers crossed it on their way to distant towns. Children ran across it, laughing, chasing the wind. But time had softened the wood, and one spring, after a heavy rain, the bridge finally gave way. Now, only two stone pillars remained, silent, patient, like the memory of a path that no longer existed. One evening, a weary traveler named Quan reached the riverbank. His sandals were frayed, his back ached from carrying his pack, and his heart was heavy with a sense of going nowhere. He had hoped to cross and find a place to rest, but there was no bridge. Only the wide river and the quiet murmur of water over stones. Quan sat on the grass, frustrated. "Why now?" he muttered. "Why me?" The river, of course, did not answer. It only glimmered in the fading light. As the last rays of the sun kissed the surface of the water, an old monk appeared, walking along the bank with a staff. He noticed Quan's slumped shoulders and asked gently, "Traveler, why do you frown at the river?" "The bridge is gone," Quan said. "I can't cross. My journey ends here." The monk looked at the river and smiled softly. "Perhaps the bridge is not gone. Perhaps it has only changed its form." Quan frowned. "What do you mean? I see no bridge." The monk tapped his staff on the earth. "You see no wood or stone, but the river itself can carry you. The question is, will you step in?" Quan hesitated. The water was cold. The current, though gentle, was unknown. He thought of all the times in his life he had waited for things to be certain before moving forward. As the moon rose, painting the river silver, Quan took off his sandals and stepped into the water. It was colder than he expected, but also alive. It wrapped around his ankles, flowing, inviting, whispering, "Trust me." Step by step, he waded deeper, feeling each stone under his feet. The monk watched from the shore, his staff glowing faintly in moonlight. "Every bridge disappears someday," he said softly, "but the river, it has always been here." Halfway across, the current tugged gently at Kwan's legs. His heart pounded. He thought of turning back, but then he looked up. The sky was full of stars reflected in the water. For a moment, it felt like he was walking through the night sky itself. With each step, fear softened. He felt the water carry away his worry, as if the river itself whispered, "You are lighter than you think." When Kwan finally stepped onto the far bank, he turned to see the river behind him. The old monk was gone, but the sound of the water remained, a steady, eternal voice. He realized that he had crossed not just the river, but a quiet threshold inside himself. He didn't need the old bridge anymore. He had learned to walk with the water. That night, Kwan slept beneath a tree, the river singing softly nearby. He dreamed of bridges made of light and flowing water, bridges that appeared only when he was brave enough to step forward. And in the dream, he realized that some paths are not built with wood or stone, but with trust. When the old paths disappear, the river invites you to trust its current. Step gently. Let the water hold you, and you will find the crossing was always within you. The stone that sank slowly. At the bend of the river, where the current slowed, there was a deep, clear pool. The water reflected the sky like glass, and fish glided beneath the surface in silence. One summer evening, a novice monk named Tien sat by the water. He carried a small stone in his palm, smooth, round, and cold. The abbot had given it to him earlier that day, saying, "Hold this stone until you understand its weight. Then let the river teach you the rest." Tien didn't understand, but he trusted that the river would know. Tien closed his fingers around the stone. It was heavier than it looked. As he held it, he thought of all the things he was carrying inside. The memory of a scolding he couldn't forget. The fear of not being good enough as a monk. The restless worry that followed him into sleep. Each thought seemed to add weight to the stone. His palm grew tired. His chest felt tight. He whispered, "I don't know how to let go." The evening breeze brushed the surface of the pool, and ripples shimmered outward. Tien leaned forward and let the stone rest on his open palm above the water. For a moment, he hesitated. If I drop this, will it really take my heaviness with it? The river didn't answer with words, only with its endless, patient murmur. he loosened his fingers. The stone slipped into the water. Tien expected the stone to disappear quickly. Instead, it sank slowly, turning gently in the clear water, reflecting slivers of evening light. Bubbles rose around it like tiny sighs. Fish darted aside, then returned as if nothing had changed. He watched until the stone touched the riverbed and rested there, still and free. As he watched, Tien felt a shift inside. His chest felt a little lighter, as if the stone had taken a small part of his worry with it. He whispered to himself, "Maybe letting go isn't falling all at once. Maybe it's sinking slowly until you reach the bottom and finally rest." A dragonfly landed on his knee. The world was so quiet that he could hear the soft beat of its wings. The abbot appeared behind him, footsteps silent on the grass. "Did the stone teach you?" he asked. Tien nodded slowly. "It taught me to sink." The abbot smiled. "Yes, stones don't argue with water. They let the river hold them until they become part of it. Can you let the river hold your heart the same way?" Tien thought for a moment, then placed both hands in his lap and closed his eyes. He imagined his thoughts sinking slowly, one by one, until the riverbed of his mind was quiet. Stars appeared overhead, and the river reflected them as if the sky had doubled. Tien stayed by the water until the crickets began to sing. He felt no need to rush back to the temple. The river was enough. The soft earth under him was enough. His own breath, slow and steady, was enough. When he finally rose, he bowed to the water and whispered, "Thank you for carrying what I couldn't." Tien walked back along the moonlit path, his steps unhurried, his chest unburdened. The stone would stay in the river forever, and maybe so would the part of him that had finally learned to rest. Not every burden must be lifted. Some can be given to the river. Let your worries sink slowly tonight, until they rest at the bottom of stillness, and let sleep carry you like gentle water. The Child and the River's Song. The night was soft and warm, and the river sang in whispers. Its voice was not loud, but it had many notes. The gentle splash of water against stones, the rustle of reeds swaying in the breeze, the distant call of a night bird. To a wandering traveler, it might have been silence, but to the river itself, it was a song. And that night, a child named Lien heard it. Lien's family lived in a small house beside the river. Every night, her parents fell asleep quickly, tired from the day's work. But Lien often stayed awake. Her mind was full of thoughts that fluttered like restless moths. What if I forget my school poem tomorrow? What if my friend is still upset with me? What if the dark outside hides something I can't see? One night, she opened the small wooden window and listened. The river was awake too, and it was singing. Curious, she slipped out of bed, bare feet touching the cool earth. The moon was a thin silver smile in the sky. Fireflies blinked softly in the tall grass. She followed the path to the riverbank, guided only by the sound of moving water. And there it was, the wide, calm river, glimmering with moonlight and secrets. Lian crouched by the edge, hugging her knees. At first, she only heard water, but then slowly, the song appeared, a low hum where the current touched a fallen tree, a higher note where pebbles made the water skip, the soft brush of reeds like a gentle drum. Lian closed her eyes. The song wrapped around her like a blanket. For the first time that week, she felt her thoughts slow down. In the quiet of her mind, she almost heard words. Little one, why do you carry so much for someone so small? She didn't answer out loud, but she thought, I can't stop worrying. My heart feels busy. The river hummed, as if chuckling softly. Then leave your busy heart with me for a while. I have carried mountains and storms. I can carry your thoughts too. Lian picked up a small leaf and whispered into it, her fears, her doubts, her what-ifs. Then she set the leaf on the water. It spun slowly, caught in the current, and drifted away under the moonlight. She felt a little lighter, like she had handed over her backpack of invisible stones to someone who didn't mind carrying it. Lian lay back on the grass, watching the stars tremble in the water. Her eyelids grew heavy. The river's song was now a lullaby. She drifted somewhere between awake and asleep, where dreams begin like soft ripples. And in that space, she felt as if the river had lifted her and was carrying her gently downstream, toward a place with no worry, only light and breath. When Lian woke the next morning, dew clung to her hair and eyelashes. The river was golden with sunrise. She smiled, feeling as if the night had washed her heart clean. She whispered, "Thank you for the song," and ran home, light as a leaf in the morning wind. Even the smallest hearts can feel heavy, but the river sings for them too. Tonight, let its lullaby carry you beyond worry into gentle sleep. The Moon in the Water. Night had wrapped the river in silver. The air was cool and smelled of damp earth and blooming night flowers. Across the water, the moon rose slowly, a perfect circle climbing the quiet sky. Its reflection, lay on the river like a soft, glowing path. And on the riverbank, a monk named Kien sat with his hands resting on his knees, watching both moons, one above, one below. Kien had always loved the way the river held the sky. Every ripple, every drift of wind made the moon tremble and stretch, but it never truly disappeared. He whispered to himself, "Even the sky needs the river to see itself." The thought felt like a secret between old friends, the sky and the water, reflecting each other without effort, without holding on. While Kian was meditating, a little boy from the nearby village wandered to the river. His feet were dusty from playing on the path. He carried a stick he had used as a pretend sword all day. He stopped beside Kian and pointed to the water. "Master, the moon fell into the river." Kian opened his eyes and smiled. "Did it?" "Yes, look, it's right there. We can catch it." The boy waded into the shallow edge, splashing water with his feet. He stabbed at the glowing circle with his stick, laughing as the moon rippled and scattered into broken pieces. "Ah," Kian said softly, "now the moon is gone." The boy froze and stared at the empty ripples. Then, as the water calmed, the reflection returned. His eyes widened. It came back! Kian patted the stone beside him, inviting the boy to sit. "The moon never really fell into the river," he said, "and the river never truly lost it. Your splashing only made it seem broken. But when the water grew still again, the moon was still there." The boy hugged his knees. "So if I want to see the moon, I just need to let the water be quiet?" Kian nodded. "And if you want to see your own heart clearly, you must do the same." The boy leaned against Kian's side, his breathing slowing to match the soft rhythm of the river. They sat together in silence. The night air was cool on their skin. The reflection of the moon trembled gently, whole and unbroken. A frog croaked somewhere upstream. A breeze carried the scent of wet grass. The boy whispered, "It feels like the river is breathing with me." Soon, the boy's eyes grew heavy. The gentle music of the river and the stillness of the night lulled him toward dreams. Kian lifted the boy in his arms, carried him back toward the village, and whispered to the river, "Thank you for the lesson tonight." The moon followed them quietly, in the sky and in the water. The next morning, the boy woke and ran to the river alone. He looked into the still water, saw the sky resting in it, and whispered to himself, "The moon is always here, as long as I stay quiet enough to see it. Your heart is a river. Every worry is a splash. Let it be still tonight, so the moon of peace can appear in your dreams." The Boat of Forgotten Names. The river was wrapped in a gentle mist, and the moonlight turned its surface into soft silver silk. Along the bank, tied to a weathered post, floated a small wooden boat. Its paint was chipped, its planks creaked with age. But inside, resting quietly, were dozens of smooth river stones, and on each stone a single name was written. An old monk named Tao approached the boat every full moon. His steps were slow, his robe brushing softly against the wet grass. He would lift one stone at a time, read the name silently, and place it gently in the boat. No one else in the village knew this ritual, and no one asked. It was something Tao carried alone. The names belonged to people he had once known. A friend who had moved away long ago, a teacher who had scolded him harshly in his youth, a stranger he had argued with in the marketplace. Each name was a memory. Each memory a small weight. Tao had realized, after many years, that even gentle hearts can grow heavy if they hold on to too many names. That night, Tao untied the boat and pushed it softly into the current. The boat drifted away, carrying all the names down the silver path of the river. He stood on the bank, hands folded, watching as the boat became a tiny dark shape against the glimmer of the moonlit water. The river made no sound of effort. It accepted the names as if it had been waiting all along. A young villager named Sun approached quietly, drawn by curiosity. "Master Tao," he whispered, "why do you send stones into the river? Aren't you afraid to forget these people?" The old monk smiled, his eyes reflecting the moon. "Some memories are meant to stay. Some are meant to drift. I do not forget the love, only the weight." The boat floated farther, and the mist began to gather around it until it looked like a small island of night. As it turned the bend of the river, a breeze rose, and the faint sound of water against wood felt like a whisper. "I will carry them. Rest now." Tao closed his eyes and breathed deeply. For the first time in weeks, his chest felt light. The ritual was not about erasing names, but about returning them to the river of time, where everything belongs and nothing clings. That night, he slept with a soft smile, dreaming of the boat, sailing into moonlight until it became part of the river itself. There are names and moments we carry too long. Let the river take them tonight, not to erase, but to free your heart so it can drift into gentle sleep. The River's Gift. The sun had just set, and the river glowed with the last traces of gold. A cool breeze drifted through the reeds, carrying the scent of wet leaves and distant flowers. An old traveler named Hai knelt by the water's edge. He had journeyed for days without finding peace. His pack was heavy, but not as heavy as the restlessness in his chest. That evening, he whispered to the river, "I have nothing to give you, and nothing left to ask." The river responded the only way it knew, with movement. Its ripples reached toward him, lapping softly at the stones under his knees. Hai closed his eyes. He felt the vibration of water against earth, a hum that seemed to rise into his body. For the first time in weeks, he stopped thinking about roads, destinations, and all the invisible things he carried. He simply listened. When he opened his eyes, he noticed something caught among the reeds. A small piece of driftwood had washed up on the shore. It was smooth, pale, and shaped almost like a heart. Hai picked it up and turned it in his hands. It was light, warm from the day's sun. He laughed softly to himself. "A gift from the river," he murmured. It was nothing of value, yet it felt like everything he needed. As he held the driftwood, Hai remembered his childhood by another river, long before the weight of adulthood had bent his back. He remembered throwing sticks into the current, laughing as they raced downstream. He remembered the way the water always returned in rain, in wells, in the life of the fields. The river had always given. He had only just remembered to notice. Hai sat on the grass, the driftwood resting on his chest. He realized that the river's true gift was not the wood itself, but the stillness it had carried into his heart. The water had washed something clean inside him, a space that had been crowded with worry. He whispered to the sky, "Thank you for reminding me that peace is not something I take. It's something I notice." That night, Hai lay by the riverbank, using his pack as a pillow. The stars emerged one by one, and their light shimmered on the water. The river's song became a lullaby, soft and unhurried. He drifted into sleep, with the driftwood still in his hands, his heart lighter than the night air. By morning, Hai continued his journey. He left the driftwood on a flat stone by the bank for another traveler to find. He no longer needed to carry the gift, because the real gift was already inside him. The river kept flowing, as it always had, patient and eternal. Sometimes, the smallest gift can carry the greatest peace. Tonight, may you find your own driftwood, a simple reminder that you are already carried by the river of life. The ripple that traveled far. The morning river was as still as polished glass. Mist rose in soft ribbons, and the first sunlight spilled over the hills, turning the water into liquid gold. A young monk named Tam knelt by the edge, watching the perfect reflection of the sky. He held a small, round pebble in his palm. The abbot had said the night before, "Even the smallest touch can move the world. Go to the river and see for yourself." Tam wasn't sure what that meant, but he trusted the river would teach him. He took a slow breath, then flicked the pebble into the water. Plop. The surface trembled, sending out a single ripple that expanded in a perfect circle. Tam watched as the ripple reached the reeds, making them sway gently, then touched the far side of the riverbank and bounced back in faint, delicate waves. Something in his chest softened. It was so small, yet it moved so far. A little boy from the village wandered over, curious about what the young monk was doing. "Why are you throwing rocks?" he asked. "Not rocks," Tam said, smiling softly. "Ripples." The boy frowned. "Ripples disappear. They don't matter." Tam shook his head. "They go farther than you think, even when you can't see them anymore." The boy sat beside him, and together they dropped another pebble. They watched the ripples spread, crossing the reflection of a drifting cloud. "Every thought you have," Tam said quietly, "is like a pebble in the river of your mind. Some make big ripples, some only a whisper, but all of them move something." The boy's eyes widened. "Even my bad thoughts?" "Especially those, which is why we learn to drop them gently instead of throwing them hard." The wind died for a moment, and the river became perfectly still again. Tam closed his eyes and placed a hand over his chest. He imagined his worries as tiny stones, the fear of failure, the pressure to be perfect, the little pang of envy he carried. He imagined each one sinking into the river of his mind, sending out soft ripples that grew calmer and calmer until all that was left was stillness. As they sat quietly, a single large fish leapt from the water, creating a splash that sent ripples racing in all directions. The boy laughed, and Tam smiled, realizing the river had spoken. One small action can touch the whole surface of life. He imagined the ripples moving beyond what he could see, bumping into reeds, shaking lotus leaves, waking dragonflies from their rest. Even after the river looked still again, the motion continued in ways he would never fully witness. Before leaving, Tam whispered to the river, "Thank you for reminding me that the smallest kindness, the quietest thought, can travel farther than I know." As they walked back to the temple, the boy stopped and tossed one last pebble, watching the ripples spread with wide eyes. In that moment, he felt as if the river and his own heart were breathing together. Every breath, every thought, Every small act of kindness creates a ripple in the river of life. Tonight, let your last thought be a gentle one, and watch it carry you into sleep. The Night Fairy. The river at night was a world of its own. The stars shimmered on its surface like scattered lanterns. Mist clung low to the water, and the air smelled of wet grass and the faint sweetness of blooming jasmine. On this quiet night, a small ferry swayed at the dock. Its lantern burned low, casting a warm circle of light that floated in the dark. The ferryman, an old man named Bao, sat waiting with his oar across his knees. He never called out to travelers. He only waited, and somehow the river always brought someone. That night, a lone traveler arrived. Her name was Lan, and her face was lined not with age, but with the weight of many restless nights. She carried no luggage, only her tired heart. Bao lifted the lantern and said gently, "Are you crossing tonight?" Lan nodded. Her voice was a whisper. "I can't seem to find rest. Maybe the other shore will be quieter." The ferryman simply smiled. "The river is quiet everywhere, if you let it be." Lan stepped into the ferry, and the wood creaked softly under her feet. Bao pushed off the dock with one steady movement, and the boat drifted into the wide silver water. The only sounds were the soft splash of the oar, the distant trill of night insects, and the heartbeat of the river itself, slow and endless. Lan sat with her hands in her lap, watching the lantern's glow paint a path across the ripples. "Why do you ferry people at night?" she asked. Bao smiled without looking up. "Some things are easier to leave behind in the dark." Lan tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "When the sun is out, everyone carries their name, their story, their worries. But at night, the river forgets all that. And so can you." Lan closed her eyes and listened. She felt the boat rock gently. She heard the water murmur against its sides. With every breath, it felt as if the river was rocking her to sleep, like a mother with a child. She whispered, "River, please take my heaviness with you." The wind carried her words across the water. Bao said nothing, but his oar dipped slowly, as if keeping rhythm with her breathing. When they reached the far bank, Lan stepped onto the soft earth. She felt different, not entirely empty, but lighter, like a jar that had been too full, now holding only what mattered. Bao lifted his lantern, and the mist swirled around him like a living cloud. "Will I see you again?" she asked. He shrugged gently. The river flows every night, and I wait. Come if your heart grows heavy again. Lan walked a few steps into the meadow. The river's song followed her. She lay down in the grass, watched the stars flicker between drifting clouds, and drifted into sleep faster than she had in months. In her dream, she was on the ferry again, but this time, she wasn't crossing to anywhere. She was simply floating, rocked by the eternal lullaby of the water. Back on the river, Bao rode the empty ferry into the mist. The lantern swayed, its light soft and steady. The river didn't need passengers to keep singing. It carried everyone, seen and unseen, in its endless, gentle embrace. Some crossings aren't to another place, but to a quieter heart. Tonight, let the night ferry of your breath carry you into sleep. No ticket, no baggage, only peace. The river that reflected stars. Night had fallen deep over the valley, and the river was darker than ink. But the sky was alive. Thousands of stars scattered across the heavens, some bright, some barely a whisper of light. On this quiet night, the river became a mirror for the universe. Every star above had a twin floating in the water below. A young monk named An stood barefoot on the riverbank, holding his robe close against the cool breeze. He had never seen the river so full of sky. He stepped closer and noticed something magical. With each soft ripple, the reflected stars seemed to move, as if the water was a second cosmos breathing with the earth, and whispered to himself, "It's like I'm standing between two worlds, one above, one below." He knelt to touch the surface, and the stars broke apart under his fingertips, spinning into rings of silver light before returning to stillness. From the bamboo path, the old abbot approached, carrying a dim lantern. "Can't sleep, Anne?" he asked softly. The young monk shook his head. "My thoughts are noisy tonight. I hoped the river would quiet them." The abbot set the lantern on a rock and looked at the shimmering water. "The stars are patient teachers," he said. "They shine without asking for permission. The river only reflects them when it is calm. Our mind is the same." They sat together in silence. A fish broke the surface with a soft splash, and the stars rippled into gentle spirals. "See that?" the abbot whispered. "A single movement can shake the sky, but stillness brings it back." Closed his eyes and imagined the river inside his own chest. Each worry was a ripple, each fear a small stone breaking the reflection. He breathed slowly, letting the river of his mind grow quiet until the stars returned. As the night deepened, the Milky Way stretched like a silver bridge across the sky, and lay back on the soft grass, watching as the river and the heavens became one endless field of light. For a brief moment, he felt himself dissolve into that stillness. No name, no weight, just a speck of starlight floating in an infinite river. The old abbot draped an extra cloth over the young monk and left him there by the river bank, and drifted into sleep to the sound of water murmuring to the stars. In his dream, he walked across the river, not on stones or bridges, but on a path of reflected starlight that stretched to the horizon. By dawn, the stars had faded, but the peace in Anne's heart remained. He rose, brushed dew from his robe, and whispered to the river, "Thank you for holding the sky for me, and for returning my own sky inside. Your mind is a river. Even the heaviest thoughts are just passing clouds. Let it be still tonight, so the stars of peace can appear and guide you to sleep." The journey back home. The river wound like a silver ribbon through the valley. By the time it reached the village, it had carried countless leaves, whispered to many stones, and reflected hundreds of sunsets. A traveler named Min returned to this river after many years away. He had followed distant roads, chased new sights, and filled his pack with things he once thought he needed. But now, standing on the familiar bank, his shoulders slumped with a weight he could not set down anywhere else. Evening fell softly over the water. Willows leaned toward the surface, their branches brushing the current like they were greeting an old friend. Min sat on a flat stone, slipped his pack to the ground, and listened. The river sounded exactly the same as it had when he was a boy. Somewhere inside him, a door he had kept shut for years creaked open. Min opened his pack. Inside were small reminders of his journey. A broken compass that once guided him through a storm. A worn scarf given by a friend he had lost touch with. A letter he never sent, its words heavy with unspoken regret. He picked up each object, feeling its story press into his palm. Every memory carried a weight, and every weight had followed him here. One by one, Min placed the objects into the river. The compass sank slowly, sending tiny bubbles to the surface. The scarf floated for a while before the current began to carry it away. The letter unfolded as the water touched it, its ink blurring into unreadable softness before vanishing entirely. He whispered with each release, "Thank you for what you gave me. I don't need to carry you anymore." The current tugged at his fingertips as if to say, "I will take what you no longer need. You are home now. Min lay back on the cool grass, watching the sky ripple in the water. He felt lighter than he had in years. He realized that home was not a house or a place on a map. It was the feeling of being without weight, without running, simply here. Fireflies rose from the grass, dancing in soft circles above the river. Min closed his eyes, and the lullaby of water carried him across the edge of wakefulness. He dreamed he was the river itself, flowing past mountains and villages, carrying stories and memories, but never clinging to any of them. By the time dawn touched the sky, Min awoke to a calm heart. His pack was empty, but his chest was full of quiet, of breath, of a home he had finally returned to. He whispered to the river, "Thank you for carrying me, even before I knew I had come home." Home is not where the road ends, but where the weight falls away. Tonight, let the river carry you back to yourself. You are already home, in this quiet breath, in this gentle sleep. The river and the sleeping village. The village slept under a blanket of quiet night. Small houses leaned into each other, their thatched roofs glimmering faintly under the starlight. The only sound came from the river, moving softly at the edge of the village like a guardian humming a lullaby. An old dog curled by the gate. A lantern flickered behind a paper window. Even the bamboo groves seemed to be breathing slower, and the river flowed on, watching over the dreams of everyone it touched. In one small house, a little girl named Thao lay awake on her mat. The day had been busy, and her head was full of buzzing thoughts. She had spilled rice at dinner and felt embarrassed. She had argued with her brother over a toy. She wondered if her teacher would scold her tomorrow. She turned on her side, then on her back, but sleep wouldn't come. Through the small window, she could see the faint silver of the river. It seemed to be calling her. Thao tiptoed outside, careful not to wake her parents. The night air was cool and soft. She followed the familiar dirt path until she reached the riverbank. Mist hovered over the surface, and the moon floated in the water, broken only by gentle ripples. She sat down on the grass, hugging her knees, and listened. The river sang without words, a soft gurgle as it passed over smooth stones, a distant splash of a fish returning to the deep. The whisper of reeds brushing together in the breeze, the sounds wove into a rhythm, and Thao felt her chest rise and fall with it. She closed her eyes, imagining that the river was a long, gentle arm rocking the whole village to sleep. In the stillness, Thao imagined that she could hear the dreams of the village around her. The baker, dreaming of warm morning bread. The fisherman, dreaming of nets heavy with silver fish. Her brother dreaming of running barefoot through summer fields. She smiled, realizing that the whole village was resting on the river's song, and that she was part of it too. Her eyelids grew heavy. Theo yawned, feeling the night wrap around her like a soft blanket. She whispered to the river, "Thank you for singing to me." Then she walked back to her little house, climbed onto her mat, and fell asleep before she could turn onto her side. The river flowed on, smiling in its own silent way, watching over the dreams of the sleeping village. By morning, the first light of dawn touched the roofs, and the river sparkled as if it had been awake all night, protecting every dream it carried. The village stirred to life. Roosters crowed, doors opened, but the gentle night would remain in Thao's heart long after she woke. The world sleeps in many houses, but the river sings to them all. Tonight, let its lullaby carry your thoughts away until your heart rests with the quiet village. The River's Whispering Stones. The river narrowed as it passed through a quiet grove, where smooth stones lined its bed like hidden treasures. Some stones had been there for centuries, carried from distant mountains, smoothed by the patience of time and water. On certain nights, when the air was still and the moon high, it almost seemed as if the stones could whisper to anyone willing to listen. In a nearby village lived a boy named Nam. He had a habit of collecting stones from the river. Every evening, he would walk along the bank and look for ones that spoke to him, not with words, but with a quiet pull in his chest. His mother often smiled and said, "You can't hear a stone, my son." But Nam only nodded, because in his heart, he knew he could. One warm night, Nam couldn't sleep. The house was quiet, but his mind buzzed with thoughts about the things he didn't understand. Why his friend had stopped talking to him, why his father seemed worried, why the world felt heavy sometimes. He slipped out the door, barefoot, and followed the moonlight to the river. The river hummed softly, and Nam sat on a flat stone near the water's edge. He placed his hands on two small stones, smooth and cool beneath his fingers. He closed his eyes. At first, he heard nothing but water and wind. Then, slowly, a kind of whisper rose in his heart. "We have been here for a long time. We have been pushed, rolled, and drowned in storms. And still, we are here. You are lighter than you think." Nam let out a long breath. It felt like the stones had carried away the buzzing in his mind. He stayed there, listening to the invisible voices of the stones until the coolness of night reached his toes and fingertips. a thought came to him, gentle and clear. If even stones can survive the river's journey, then so can I. I don't have to hold every worry so tightly. He picked up a small, round stone, kissed it lightly, and set it back in the water. When Nam finally walked home, the night wrapped him like a soft blanket. He crawled into bed and felt as if the stones were still beneath his palms, steady and quiet. His dreams were gentle that night. He floated down the river, resting on a raft of smooth stones that whispered lullabies until he disappeared into starlight. By morning, the world felt softer. Nam walked to the river with a smile, ready to face the day. The stones said nothing in words, but their silence was enough. Even the quietest things have wisdom to share. Tonight, let the stones of the river carry your worries away until only stillness remains. The Bridge of Mist. Before the first light of dawn, the river was wrapped in a blanket of mist. It curled and swayed above the water like smoke from an invisible fire. From a distance, it almost looked like there was a bridge, a pale drifting arch made entirely of clouds resting on the river. Villagers often whispered that on certain mornings, if your heart was quiet enough, you could walk across that bridge in your dreams. A boy named Hugh often visited the river at dawn. He carried with him a small wooden flute and a chest full of worries he never said out loud. His father was far away working in another town, and at night, Hugh sometimes feared he would forget the sound of his father's laugh. On this morning, he saw the mist bridge for the first time. It rose from the far bank to the near, hovering just above the water. His breath caught. It felt like an invitation. Hugh crouched at the river's edge, watching the mist swirl with every breeze. He closed his eyes and let the cool air touch his cheeks. When he opened them, he imagined himself stepping onto the bridge of mist. In his mind, the world grew silent. Even the birds seemed to pause their wings. One step, then another. The mist held him in his dream, light as a leaf drifting downstream. As Hugh walked, he felt his worries fall away like pebbles from his pockets. Each thought that had kept him awake, loneliness, missing his father, fear of tomorrow, slipped off his shoulders and sank into the quiet water below. The mist glowed faintly with the rising sun, and for a moment he felt as if he was walking in the sky itself. Halfway across the misty bridge, Hugh imagined seeing a familiar figure waiting. His father, smiling softly. The figure knelt and placed a hand on Hugh's head. "You haven't lost me," the voice said gently. "Every memory, every laugh, flows in you like this river. even apart, we are always carried together. A tear rolled down Hugh's cheek, but it felt warm, not heavy. The morning sun rose higher, and the mist began to thin. The bridge faded back into drifting ribbons. Hugh opened his eyes. He was still by the riverbank, his small flute resting across his knees. He took a deep breath. The river glimmered. The mist still swayed, but his heart was as light as the morning air. As villagers woke, Hugh walked home slowly, carrying nothing but a quiet smile. The worries that once felt like stones were now just ripples behind him, left in the water where they belonged. That night, he slept deeply. In his dream, he crossed the mist bridge once more, and this time he needed no invitation. The river would always carry mist in the morning, but for Hugh, it would forever be a bridge back to peace. He had learned that some journeys don't need roads or boats, only a gentle heart and the courage to step into stillness. The bridges we need most are made of quiet moments. Tonight, let your breath be the bridge of mist, and let it carry you into gentle sleep. The river's night guardian. The river lay under a sky full of stars, its surface dark as ink, broken only by the soft gleam of moonlight. A thin fog drifted low, and the air smelled of night flowers and cool stone. Somewhere along the bank, an old wooden shrine stood under a willow tree. The villagers said it was watched over by a guardian spirit, one who never slept and kept the river safe after dark. A boy named Koa often visited the river at night. He had trouble sleeping, especially on evenings when the wind carried the distant hoot of owls or the echo of a dog barking far away. The world at night felt so big, and he felt so small. One evening, he walked down to the shrine, barefoot in the soft grass, to see if the river really had a guardian. Koa knelt by the water. The current whispered like a quiet lullaby. At first, he saw nothing, only the reflection of the moon and the shadow of the willow swaying. But as he closed his eyes and listened, he felt something warm and gentle, a presence, like the night itself had leaned down to place a soft hand on his shoulder. A voice rose inside his heart, not loud, but certain. "Little one, why do you wander when the village sleeps?" Koa whispered, "I can't rest. The world feels too big, and I feel too small." The river hummed in reply. "Even the smallest stone rests at the river's bottom. Even the smallest leaf floats to where it belongs. You are carried too." Koa opened his eyes and imagined a figure standing over the water, tall and calm, made of mist and moonlight. It wasn't frightening. It was like looking at the night made into a friend. The presence seemed to say without words, "Sleep, little one. I watch the river. I watch the village. I watch you." Koa lay down on the grass by the shrine, hands tucked under his cheek. The sound of water and wind melted the edges of his worry. Soon, he drifted into a dream. He was a small leaf floating downstream under a sky of silver stars. The river cradled him in its endless arms, and the night guardian followed silently along the bank, glowing like the moon itself. By morning, the mist had lifted, and Koa awoke with dew in his hair and sunlight on his face. The shrine looked quiet, but he smiled because he knew the river had watched over him all night. He whispered, "Thank you for keeping me safe," and walked home light as a feather, ready to sleep deeply the next night. Even in the darkest night, you are never truly alone. Tonight, let the river's guardian hold your heart and carry you into safe, gentle sleep. The River of Returning Dreams. The river glimmered under the soft light of the moon, quiet as if it were holding its breath. Mist drifted across the water like slow-moving clouds fallen from the sky. In the nearby village, everyone slept, but a young woman named Mai sat on the riverbank, her bare feet in the cool grass. She had been having the same dream for many nights. A path that led somewhere familiar, but always disappeared before she could reach the end. Mai whispered to the water, "Why does my dream stop before I come home?" The river said nothing, but its surface shimmered with moonlight as if inviting her to wait. She closed her eyes and let the night air brush against her face. A memory surfaced, her childhood, running along this very bank, laughing as her father carried her on his shoulders. The dream she kept chasing was not a place. It was a feeling. As she watched the river, something unusual happened. The ripples slowed, and her own reflection blurred into a younger version of herself, a small child smiling back. Mai blinked, and the image dissolved into the silver water. Her heart beat softly. It felt as if the river was saying, "Your dreams always return if you are quiet enough to receive them." Mai lay back on the grass, hands folded over her chest, letting the river's song fill her ears. The gentle gurgle of water over stones, the faint creak of bamboo in the wind, a night bird calling once, then falling silent. Her eyelids grew heavy. In the space between waking and dreaming, she felt herself floating, as if the river had lifted her into its current. In her dream, Mai found herself standing on a soft river of light. The water glowed beneath her feet, and every step sent a small ripple forward. She walked along the current, past memories she thought she had lost. Her mother brushing her hair at sunset, the smell of rice fields after the rain, the laughter of friends she hadn't seen in years. Each memory rose like a lantern, floating alongside her until it drifted gently into the night. The river of dreams carried her to a small wooden gate, her family's house, exactly as it had been when she was a child. Inside, there was no one waiting, and yet she felt completely at home. She realized the river had not taken her to the past, but had returned her to the peace she had been seeking all along. When Mai opened her eyes, the first light of dawn touched the horizon. Her feet were damp with dew, her hair smelled of grass, and her heart felt as if it had been washed clean. She whispered to the river, "Thank you for bringing my dreams back to me." The water rippled gently, and the morning breeze carried away her words like a soft promise. That night, when Mai returned to her bed, sleep came quickly. Her dreams no longer ran away. They always began with the sound of the river and always carried her back home. The dreams you think you've lost are never truly gone. Tonight, let the river carry them back to you and rest, finally home in your heart. And now, the river is quiet again. It has carried your memories, your dreams, and your gentle heart through the night. The moon is still watching, and the stars are waiting on the surface of the water. In this stillness, you no longer need a story. You only need your breath, and the river's breath, moving together as one. The night invites you to let go of words and follow the soft questions that drift across the river of your mind. Now, just listen and let the whispers carry you deeper and deeper into rest. Can you hear the river breathing beneath the night sky? If you listen closely, is it your breath or the rivers that you feel in your chest? How many thoughts are you still carrying tonight? The small ones, the heavy ones, the ones that visit just before sleep. If you placed each of them, one by one, onto the river, would the water hold them gently until they drifted away? Can you imagine the weight leaving your shoulders as softly as a leaf falling onto still water? What would it feel like to be that leaf, light, free, floating wherever the current takes you, with no hurry and no fear. When was the last time you let go of the day completely? The last time you trusted that the world could turn without your worry, without your hands holding it in place? If the river could speak, what would it whisper to you right now? Would it say, "Rest, little one, I am carrying you even now"? If you close your eyes, can you see the stars reflected on the water? Can you see them inside yourself? Tiny lights of calm, waiting for the ripples to fade. What would happen if tonight you simply stopped chasing and let the river of dreams come to you? If your last thought tonight was just gratitude for this breath, for this moment, would it be enough to carry you into gentle sleep? Who would you be if you let go of every what if, and every not yet, and every maybe tomorrow? Would you recognize yourself as lighter, softer, closer to the sky? If you listen very carefully, can you hear the night say your name and remind you you are safe? You are safe. The river is holding you. The earth is holding you. And the night is carrying you home. And now, the questions fade, like ripples disappearing on the water. The river has heard every word you whispered to it tonight, and in its gentle way, it has carried them all away. Your heart is quieter now. Your mind is softer, and the night is ready to hold you completely. You no longer need to listen to my voice or hold on to anything at all. From here, you are simply floating. And as the whispers fade, the river opens into the final journey of the night. The river is still flowing, softly, silently, under the endless sky. It has carried leaves, stones, and dreams for countless lifetimes. And tonight, it carries you. Your body is safe. Your breath is slow. And the weight of the day has already drifted downstream. You are no longer standing on the shore, no longer watching the water. You are the water. You are the stillness. You are the calm. The stars are above you and below you, reflected in the endless river of rest. You do not need to reach for them. They are already yours. Every soft breath you take is a tiny light, flickering gently in the night sky. Imagine the river stretching on forever. It flows past mountains, forests, and quiet villages asleep under the moon. Every turn of the river makes the world a little softer. Every ripple carries away the last of your worries. There is nothing left to do. No more roads to walk. No more weight to carry. The river carries everything for you. You are floating now, effortless, as if the water and the night are the same soft blanket. Far in the distance, a night bird calls once, and the sound fades into the deep velvet silence. Time does not matter here. The night stretches as long as you need it to. The river flows as slowly as your dreams. Your eyes grow heavier, but your heart feels lighter than ever. You are part of the night now, part of the river, part of the quiet earth that is always holding you. Every thought that once tugged at you is just a leaf on the current, moving farther and farther away, until it disappears into the soft horizon of sleep. The night will keep you, the river will rock you, and your dreams will carry you home. Sleep now, deep and gentle, like water flowing to the sea.